everybody. May we start? First of all, it's wonderful to see such a big audience. I mean, it's winter, it's dark, it's cold, it's raining, but you're here. So we appreciate this very much. Apologies from our director, Professor Ian Smith, who is currently on leave. So it's my privilege to introduce our guest speaker this morning. Justin Letschert is the CEO of Union Swiss, a leading South African producer, distributor and exporter of skincare products. And since acquiring the company in 2000, he and his brother and business partner, David, have overseen its growth in a streamlined global entity. Now, with the international rollout to 17 or so countries and across 5 continents, the company has notched up the #1 selling product in its category in 14 of these countries. The company's global activity is controlled from its Cape-based, and we're very proud of this, head office. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can look forward to something a little bit different than the usual leaders angle that we normally have, because we have a young entrepreneur to listen to. Over to you, Justin, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to be breaking the talk up into 4 sections. First, I'm going to be talking about the reasons to go global and whether you should consider taking a local brand global. The second part is choosing your countries. There are 193 countries to choose from. Actually, 194 if you include the Vatican, but you can't launch them. So, 193 countries which to choose. The 4th section is going to be what structure to have abroad in these countries you go into. And, sorry, did I say 3rd or 4th? 3rd section. The 4th section is going to be how to structure your business locally to be competitive globally. Before I get into it, I just want to say that our experience is in the skincare industry, the personal care product industry. So in a way, it's skewed by that industry. But I think the insights are pervasive, but we can see we're not complete. All right, considering taking a local brand to the global arena, why would you want to do that? Well, quite simply, South Africa is 27% of the world's GDP, or 1 of 193 countries. So it's obviously highly attractive to be playing in the global arena rather than in the local arena. So that little part of the puzzle that's cut out is supposed to represent South Africa. I think it's more than 0.7%. But do you want to be playing on the piece of the puzzle, or do you want to be playing on the main square? And I think everyone wants to. But now let's look at some of the other things to consider and whether to take your local brand global. First thing, when you leave the shores of South Africa, you no longer have a brand. What you've got is a product. A product that no one knows from probably a company that no one knows. So, you've got to look at your product and be very honest about what you've got. You can't take something that's a commodity into the global market. You don't want to be selling ice to Eskimos. So, the thing is that, people get emotionally attached to a brand or to their product, and they think it's great. But when you go into the global arena, it might not be that great. And so you've got to think about that very carefully. Just an honest look at what you've got and the product intrinsics. If your technology or your product is way superior to what is currently out there, you've probably got a strategic advantage. Or even better, if your product's in a completely new category. That's the best possible thing you can have, a new category being launched overseas. Chances of you having that are quite slim. So you need to be honest about what you're doing. The next thing to think about, and I'm going to jump 2 slides here because I unfortunately put them out of order, is this. Is this perception that when you go global with a brand, that it's a graph that goes like this. You're in the local market, and they go the next country, next country, next country, next country. And that's the trajectory. Okay. But it's completely different to that. What happens is you've got your local growth, and then you go overseas and you drop to the bottom again. and you start from scratch. And you have to launch 192 times from nothing as an unknown product and create a brand in each one of those countries. And so it's like a jail sentence. If you're not into it and you don't know what it's going to be like, it's important that you realize it's going to be tedious. 192 launches. The other thing to consider, so I'm going to jump again because it's out of order, is it doesn't make money to start. You lose money when you take a brand global. Initially, you've got to invest money. No one knows about the product. People think it's incremental sales, globalizing the brand. Of course it's incremental sales, but it's far more incremental expenses. It will vacuum cash. If you are a listed entity, you are in big trouble. Okay? Because after the hype that your PR agency has generated by saying that you're going to take your brand global, the next few years your profit is going to be less. And then your shareholders are going to be on your back because your market capitalization is going to be down. And it's just something you've got to think about. Big, big, big pressure from shareholders that don't like profits going down, like smooth profits that are going north. Taking something local global, that can never happen. Because you are launching 192 times, you're starting from scratch, it's going to take cash. When it was your product or whatever you do was originally launched in South Africa, that's probably what happened. But unfortunately, everyone's forgotten that because it's a long-established brand in this country. New brands, new products, suck cash. Sorry if this is getting a little bit negative, but the first part's the negative part, and the second part is the positive part. You can't leave the shore unless you've got the right product. Otherwise, you can just waste your money. So it's very important that we get this right at the beginning and get an understanding of what the issues are. Okay, so just coming back to this, another thing to think about, no one is waiting for you overseas, all right? In South Africa, everyone knows someone who was at university with someone, whose brothers, sisters, wife's dog walk together. It's not like that overseas. You might know one person in one country or two people in two countries. You don't know people in 193 countries. You are nobody when you get there. If you are the type of person that likes to hang around with your mates and whatever, and do business with friends, and you're great at networking, well then, that's great, but it ain't going to work for you in the global markets. Something to think about, the psychology of what you're going to go through in the global markets. Again, I'm sorry if I'm getting negative, but it's just something to think about. Big fish in a small pond, not such a bad thing. When you're in South Africa and you dominate a market in your sector or category industry, there are good opportunities to make money and add on profit with little expense. There are economies of scale. You can make acquisitions that become very profitable if you put them through your infrastructure. That doesn't happen. Okay? There's no economies of scale going global. It's the opposite. So one must consider, if you're looking for growth and you think the growth is you're going to get by going global, maybe you should consider what you've already got here and look at opportunities here. Because it's not such a bad thing, because it's quite a nice place to be when you dominate the tank. Okay, been through that. Just a small thing which we encountered is the regulatory environment overseas versus the regulatory environment in South Africa. South Africa is a developing country. You either don't have the laws, or we got the laws and they're not policed. In first world countries, they got the laws and they policed. So we had, I'll give you an example of why I put this up. We had a product, I think we were the first, I don't know, we couldn't find any other product worldwide to break the thinning hair market for women. Because, and this was years ago, but historically, you know, it was male baldness was, and still is a big thing. But no one had addressed, and because of stress of the way women work today and all the rest of it, women lose hair more than they used to. And so it's a big, 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 big opportunity globally. And we had a product addressing that. It's still in the South African market. We sold it. And we thought that we could take this product global because it was a new category, which is what I said at the beginning is a big opportunity. The claims that we are making on those products, you couldn't make in most first world countries. You can't even say the word hair loss without being a registered pharmaceutical in most first world countries. So we had this great product, but we couldn't actually leave the shores. And you don't want to find that out once you've started the whole process. So one must consider the regulatory environment in the countries you're going to go to. Okay, that's the first section, and as I said, it's going to be difficult and it's going to be competitive. Just to give you an example, 2 years ago, we launched our product. And just a bit of background, I mean, we sell a skincare product called BioOil, and it retails for between about 10 and 20, depending on the size, 10 and 20 pounds, and the equivalent in other currencies. And we sell it through mass retail. When we went to America 2 years ago and launched, in that year, and that's the reason I was looking at my paper, 1,783 skincare products launched that year in America. Okay, so you think that you're going global, but there are people from all countries that are doing that. And obviously the Americans themselves are launching products prolifically. So it's competitive. So now that we've got that out of the way, I want to talk about which countries to go into, then we're getting to the positive stuff about how to structure to be globally effective. So, as I said, there are 193 countries out there, and one can look at it and say, well, let's look at the GDP. Where's the money? Okay, so that's the top 10, and you expect. Whoops, sorry, where's the pointer? This thing here. Okay, USA by miles. Okay, I think it's 13 trillion, and the next country is less than half of that. So, and that's the order of the top 10. So this is where the money is. That's one way of looking at it, the top 10. Next way is looking at population, because you just want people. And if you've got a relatively cheap product, maybe you don't want money, you just want people. Okay. So China jumps to the top, obviously India, USA. I'm sure you're familiar with, you would have thought that most of these countries would come up. The next way of looking at it is GDP per capita, because obviously you want the people to, every individual to have money, and then you get these countries coming up. And I think from the previous two slides, the only one that's still there is the USA. Now, the reason these countries like Qatar and Luxembourg, I mean, obviously because there's so few people there. So lots of money, few people. Not really that attractive, actually, if you're launching globally. So that's not a perfect, there's no perfect way of looking at it. So we at Union Swiss have been working on a model on how to decide which countries to go into. The first thing, before I go into that model, it seems daunting with 193 countries, but the reality is that most of them are a waste of time. Okay. If you take the bottom 82 countries and add all their GDPs together, you only get to 1% of the world's GDP. Okay. If you take the bottom 132 countries, leaving only 61 countries at the top, that bottom 132 only make 5% of the world's GDP. That's one of the problems in the world. Okay, so you're only really looking at 61 countries to get 95% of the GDP. So it's not as big as one thinks it is once they started. The model we use, I'll give you an example. It's all relative where you launch. Just relative. One country better than another. So if you look at it like that, in South Africa, our GDP per capita is the 81st biggest in the world. It comes in at about $9,000 something per person. Population-wise, we're the 28th biggest population in the world. And we take those scores and we add it together and we get 109. We've done that for every country in the world and then put them in ascending order. So as you can imagine, America will come out number one. Okay? Highest GDP per capita. No, sorry, not the highest GDP, but one of the highest, and the third highest population in the world. So they're going to have a very low score, and they'll come at number one. So I'll show you now. That's the top 20 on the scoring system. And then interesting things pop out, like this. South Korea, Turkey, Taiwan, maybe wouldn't fit, Saudi Arabia, okay, Poland, I don't know, maybe Iran, lots of people and money, oil money. Things pop out of the woodwork. But we don't stop there when we look at it. We've done that and put them in ascending order from 1 to 193. As I say, the bottom 132 is not really of much interest. But of the top 60, there's ways that you can go through and then decide to eliminate So first you do this and then decide to eliminate countries based on certain criteria. And let's just look at what those potential criteria can be. And there are lots of criteria. I'll just try to highlight a few of them. Duties. Number one. What are the duties on your products in each country that you want, or the top 61 at least? Because that is going to kill you. Okay. So for us, Brazil is one of the big attractive markets. Huge amount of people, fair amount of GDP per capita, not great, but lots of people, very big into cosmetics and skincare, the Brazilians. 40% duties to get into that market. We can't get in unless we manufacture locally. And as a small company going global, you don't want to add complexity at the beginning. So Brazil gets put to the back, not the back of the queue, but waits. So that's an example. And depending on what industry you're in, there might be no duties, etc., coming out of South Africa. But for me, I think it's the first thing to consider because it's an absolute thing. You can't get around it. The next thing. Is language. If you can't understand it, it's very hard to sell something in a foreign language. Okay? And that apparently says the same thing in all those languages. English is, and maybe Afrikaans, go to the Netherlands maybe, but English, there are lots of attractive English-speaking countries. UK, Australia, America, Canada, these are big, there are 3 of them in the top 20. So that's already a start. I would suggest thinking about English-speaking countries. You want to get going. It's also the order in which you do it. You want to do the easiest one first. Well, maybe not the easier one might be a very small country, but something, you want to do it in the right order, and there are a lot of things to think about. So language is one of them. This is an interesting slide, because in South Africa, we're in a developing country, and you mustn't let your experience here skew your thinking. In South Africa, 30-second prime time TV slot on Generations or something like that. I don't know what prime is anymore these days. 120,000 Rand for prime time. In America, 30-second prime time, 3.2 million Rand. Okay. Why? And the reason is actually not really about how big America is. Because these programs like Desperate Housewives, blah, 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 all these programs, they're the same in every country. It's a weird thing. It's not like you have to learn new TV slots and everything when you go out. Or magazines. They've all got the same magazines. Everything is all international. Media is all international. We all get the same show. The difference is, in America, firstly, there wouldn't be 20 people watching one TV. That's the first thing. Okay. The second thing is, all these people in America can afford your product. In South Africa, that person over here can afford your product, and the rest can't. So the cost of media is very expensive. The bigger the prize, the bigger the cost of entry, and the more competitive it is. Because in America, if you look at primetime TV slots in America, you look at primetime in a developing country and see the nature of the adverts that are on primetime, they'll differ dramatically. You will see car adverts in America. Why? Because you've got lots of people with lots of money watching. You don't want to sell them something that costs $10. You want to sell them something that costs $100,000. Okay? Because they can all afford it. And the car companies can afford to pay for the advertising because they make so much money when the cars get sold. Whereas if you're just a small brand and you advertising, it becomes very, very expensive. So think about that in the market you're going to. Just while we're in America, 300 billion of the total world's 450 billion media is spent in America. 2/3 of the world's media is in America. So that's the idiosyncrasy of America. I've just pointed that out. Any other first world country will go to the normal proportion. But it's very competitive, and it's just something to think about. Don't Discovery Health, America, okay? Boy, no America, you know? Don't go there first. Big mistake, okay? Counterfeits. Go through your top 60 and put a red line through Nigeria, India, China, depending on your product, depending on your market, if it can be knocked off. Not that you're not going to go there, maybe Nigeria last, but certainly China you're going to go to. It's an attractive market. Interesting to see the top 20 that China didn't come up. Interesting. Comes up number 23, 26. 24. China's 24 on our model. And South Africa, as a matter of interest, is 29. China doesn't come up, but I would rule those out. For the simple reason is you're eventually going to get there. But when you get into legal disputes and you have to police things like that, your top management time is sucked in. And you're supposed to be marketing and promoting your product, but you're looking at big files like this that are going into with lawyers and courts, and you've all been through it. So just try and avoid it to start. That's just a suggestion. One other thing when selecting the country is Japan. So one country that we've come across that is completely different to the rest of the world. Maybe not a good idea, even though it's the second most attractive country in the world, to go there at the beginning. And that's simply because it doesn't matter who you are. I can't get into the whole Japanese culture now, but it will take you longer to launch, to create a brand in Japan. It will, just because of the way the decision-making process works by individuals in those countries, and a number of other factors. It's a long, long process, and it's a difficult process because they need trust in the company before they've got trust in the product, and you're an unknown company, an unknown product, etc., etc. So my suggestion with Japan is you're going to lose a lot of money before you make money. So think about maybe waiting until you've got a very strong cash flow, very positive cash flow, and that you can burn money for a long time getting into Japan. Because they won't allow you to launch there probably for the first few years while they talk to you anyway. So start it early, and that's it. Okay, so those are some of the things that I wanted to cover under taking the top 20 on the scoring system, or the top 60, and then just going through and eliminating so you can get fewer countries to think about. It really depends on your product, your industry. There are many things to consider, but those are some of them. Okay, the third section we're going to get onto now is deciding what structure to have abroad. Now, basically on a macro level, when you're going into a new country, either to put up your own bricks and mortar, or you can appoint someone in that country to be your distributor. I'm not an expert on that. My experience, certainly when I was in mergers and acquisitions, I dealt with merging or selling brands of companies to try and keep those bricks and mortar there, to sweat the overhead. The information that's available, and the information highway which can be passed around the world, the movement and communication, is running counter to having bricks and mortar in every country. That's the trend. Whether it's right for you or not, I can't say. Certainly for us, we use an exclusive distributor in every country. So also you think about putting up bricks and mortar and employing people in other countries and stuff, you're getting distracted from what you should be doing. And that is marketing your product in that country. You start to get into operational issues rather than getting into marketing issues. So that's the only comments I've got about that. I think in most instances, there's enough spare capacity around the world for you to use distributors or contract manufacturers or whatever. Outsourced model is always better initially because there's less overhead pressure on the overheads. You can always change it at a later stage. Very difficult to take a building down. It's easy to put it up. If you're going to look for a distributor, you need to decide what you're looking for before you go out looking for it. Now, the first thing and most important thing is you are looking for a distributor. Distributors aren't looking for you. I've seen this mistake so many times, not in this business now, but when I was in mergers and acquisitions. I'm selling a brand, and the person says, oh, no, we've got an exclusive distributor in Australia. They've got a 10-year distribution agreement. They never sold the thing. There's a container of stock sitting in someone's garage somewhere, but we signed the distribution agreement. It's the classic case, someone's sitting in their office, they get a call from someone, hi, I was in South Africa in December, I was on safari, blah, 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 loved your product, would love to be the distributor in Timbuktu. I used to be in the personal care products industry, and I'm now retired, and I'm going to give it a go, and I'm keen, and I'm waste of time, okay? 1% of the time, maybe, you get to see it, okay? But maybe, I'm saying. And then the person in South Africa goes, I'm going global. No, you're not. You're going down the tubes, okay? It's like, it happens so often. Okay? No one builds your business for you. You only build your business for yourself. So in choosing a distributor, you are choosing, which means you've got to find them, and then you've got to select. Now, there's a lot of things that one looks for. And we used to have a laundry list. We used to do a due diligence on a distributor, go in, and we still do. But we've narrowed it down to one thing that you look for. And that is, how good are they at getting distribution funding? Okay? You get distracted by everything else. Okay? Your distributor's job, primary job, is to get you onto the shelf, or whatever you do, get you into the trade, into the local market, and be good at that. There are two things you need to be successful globally. Two things, only two things. The rest is just complexity. One is cash, and lots of it. And two is distribution. Once you've got cash and distribution, you are 75% of the way there. Because anyone that's got money can buy media space. Anyone. Pay an ad agency that can produce ads so they're coming out of your ears. Anyone can do it. There is no barrier to entry. Any TV program, radio, print magazine will take your money. All you need is money. Okay? But money can't buy relationships. Your distributor's job is to have the relationships. You need to have the money. Distributor's never going to pay. They're going to pay, it's also going to be a failure. Okay? You need to pay. Distributor has got the relationships with the trade. They've got the local relationships. And the strength of those relationships is how you choose your distributor. We've got one thing that we use to decide before we get into how good their relationships are, and that's cultural fit. You're going to get into a very long-term relationship. If they may be brilliant at what they do, but you don't get on, don't start, because it's just one of those things. It's going to end in tears. So there must be a cultural fit between the distributor and yourselves, and then obviously they must have the distribution. So, because once there's a cultural fit, you find that if you can talk to someone, you can fix anything. Not necessarily distribution, because it's relationships. But everything else that they might not have, oh, they don't have this. You can employ anyone to do anything. Okay? But if the cultural fit's right, you can talk to the people, talk the same language. And it's very interesting because when we talk to our different distributors, we talk, if we talk to the Indians, it's like Southern Hemisphere thing maybe. Who's Indian in the Southern Hemisphere? Southern Hemisphere, people just, I don't know, let's talk straighter. And the Indians, Australians, ourselves, just say it as it is. There's no hierarchy, there's no, what do you feel bad with? But when you're dealing with Northern Hemisphere, there's more protocol and stuff like that. And so it's quite good to try and find someone, at least know the CEO of the company that you're getting involved with. You can talk to that person. Second most, hang on. We moved on to the next section, and that is structuring your business for global success. Okay, so it's the fourth section. What do you do locally to make it successful abroad? Now, the first thing to remember is that it comes back to that thing about people approaching you for distribution. If you're deciding to start an export department, you're doing the wrong thing. Okay? Because that's assuming that you've got this trajectory. Okay? And you're going from South Africa, and now you're going to another country. It's not like that. It's not an export department. Okay? You are relaunching in a new country. And so you need your top people in your South African business to now step away from the South African business, and you need to set up a global head office. And you need to look at your South African business as a distributor. Now, obviously that's not going to happen on day one. It doesn't make sense to move people into another office, etc., etc. It will happen. That's what happened to us. Okay. On day one, we didn't do that. So then suddenly we realized we're looking like an exporter. Our resource, we need the resource to be sitting in the head office. And if you're going to go global, the idea is for South Africa to be 0.7% of your turnover eventually. It's getting in the list every year. It's getting further and further away. Not in terms of how it's run and all the rest of it, but if you're going to go global, you must be looking back at your South African business, not looking from your South African business overseas. So we've got a head office based in Cape Town. Now we've got a South African business based in Cape Town. We started off in that South African business. Very important, psychologically and everything, to consider that your top people need to move across into the global business. Your best chance of success is having your top people on the job. In global business, you need to be a thinker, not a doer. It's great if you're a doer, but you need to be a thinker first. Okay? Thinkers change the world. And you can, if you're in a local business, you can get up early like we did today. That's why I was late. You can get up early and you can work 2 hours later and you can miss lunch and you can be successful that way. It will never work globally. Never. You have to outthink the competition. You need to have that culture. Having a local business, by definition, you've got a lot of implementers in a local business. Few thinkers, a lot of implementers. Head office, lots of thinkers, few implementers. Because if you make a mistake and you send it out to all your distributors around the world, undo that mistake. Do it act quickly. Thinkers, they won't think someone to think forever. But think it through. Because once it's gone, it's gone. And then the repercussions on this, it's like dropping a pebble in a pond. It's like, it's gone, it's too late. You need thinkers. So it's about staffing. And that's another reason that it's good to have your top people from CEO, director level involved. Not to put employer person, I want to go global and put an export manager, doesn't even know our business, bring him in. No chance. Okay? The people that are making your current business successful, you don't have to be a genius to work it out. I've got the best chance of making your global business successful. They know your industry, they know the product, they're doing it at the moment. And you need to move them across and get their time. Can't drive to work anymore. It's a big problem. Should have maybe been on the selection of the countries. East and West are problematic. After a while, it's tedious speaking to people at 10 at night and at 6 in the morning. Go up to the UK, they speak English, same time zone, 1 hour, 2 hours. It's much easier. Maybe it's a better place to start. Because even though you have to fly, the time it's tedious, tedious, tedious. I did M&A for a company in South Africa where the CEO didn't like to fly. It's a problem. You know, you need to sit on planes. And the worst thing is, you go, when you first start, and maybe you're prepared to fly economy class. Okay? Not for long. Okay? Top people sleep flat. So it's expensive as well. Because eventually, if you are successful, you are going to be recruiting thinkers, top people. Global head office doesn't have a lot of, it's a very different dynamic. It has mainly professionals, top people in the head office, not a lot of junior people running around. They've got to go to work on a plane, and it gets tedious. So initially there's attractive, oh, it's great, 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 and then it gets worse and worse and worse. And it's just something to think about in structuring business, that is going to happen. You can't ignore it. You can't, face time is critical. So in any country, I mean, unless it's been going for a while, certainly in launch phase, you're going to be there every second month, maybe getting down to 4 times a year. You'll never get it less than twice a year. So, depending on your industry and what you do, but that's our experience. Taking a brand global, you need to look at your marketing department, because you go start afresh with a new brand and a new company, unknown in a country. You need to tell the population about your product. You need to communicate. And the thing is that your marketing department here, you might be working on Marmite. It's been around for, I don't know, 100 and something years. It's an established brand. Your marketing department is working on an established brand. I don't know when the last time those people in that marketing department launched a new product in an unknown country. I guess never. Okay. Look at the strength of your marketing department, because once you've got the cash and you've got the distributor, you can buy the media space, you can put you on the shelf. Can your marketing department deliver the right message? A message that can be used, and you don't want to change your message in every country because it won't work. It's a global brand. So you need to look. I would say that a younger brand in South Africa has more chance going global than an older brand. Purely because the people that made it successful locally are still in the business. Because people that come from outside, they come onto a brand that's been established, don't really know what happened in the beginning anymore. So they're doing a bit of a maintenance job, looking for opportunities, etc., in marketing. But it's a whole different skill, starting something from scratch. And you really need to consider that. The best possible opportunity is really, talk about the marketing department, those top executives should be marketing focused. Okay? You need the operational side, but you need someone at the top level that's going to put their weight behind the marketing. You need to communicate in each country. Just one other little thing. When you're going abroad, that's the perception of South Africa. Okay. It's a safari destination. So you might have a great product. We're a sophisticated country, but it's not what they think overseas. So looking back, you've got to put yourself in their shoes. It's equivalent to always say of someone from Mauritius knocking on your door and saying, hey, I've got a great product I want to distribute in South Africa. You know, great product in Mauritius. I mean, are they, you know, I thought it was just people just go on holiday there. I mean, that's what they think about South Africa. They think it's a place you go on holiday. So you have to be more professional than people from first world, because they're waiting to see that you're not professional, because it will, their expectation is that, and that's what they expect. And the minute they get a glimpse of it, they'll say, ah, yeah, I thought so, you know. So you need to counter that by the materials you're using, the way you present yourself, especially if you're calling on big retailers or whatever. They don't, it scares them. And that's for your first country, second country. It's also very interesting, like when you're going to choose your first country to launch in, on the scoring system. Maybe you want to start with the smallest country to test it. Very soon, you need to get to one good first world market. And a good one is the UK. Speaks English, big, in the top 10, because you can use that success when you go to all the rest of the countries. Okay. Australia's actually not good enough. Although it's first world, etc., etc. Say, oh, we've got great products in Australia. Northern Hemisphere. Get into the UK or a country like that. I'm not saying which one, it could be anywhere. It's Germany, France, Italy, Spain, but more difficult. Get in and then have a success. When you go to America and you say, we're number one in the UK, or we're this in the UK, well, that's up, they'll listen. Not that nice, well, but I mean, more than if you say, South Africa, you know. And then they're looking for a reason why it's a success why it wouldn't work in their country. Oh, it's a success in South Africa, it's a funny country. Your financial structure to be successful globally, you want to use your South African model. Whatever you're doing in South Africa with your product or service or brand, probably going to be wrong overseas. I'll just put a simple thing here. I mean, if you're producing something for R&D in South Africa, you've got no other cost. You sell it for 20 and you make 15 profit, 75% GP. Here, you start with your production cost, you add on your shipping. I've just made up these numbers, 2 rand of duties, 10 rand for your distributor. It's a big, big cost for a distributor. You're now sitting at an overall cost of 19. You can't sell it for 20 anymore. Okay? You're going to sell it for, I don't know, up to you, but you might sell it for 40. Okay? Now it's a hell of a lot different to the 20 here. Now the problem is, a huge problem, is that you started in South Africa and you've got a financial model in South Africa. It will never work.
That's why globally there are no low-cost brands that are global, really. The low-cost brands, low-cost products are all local. Because just the cost, as you move it across the ocean and do the distributor and the value chain just gets longer, you just can't be competitive. Some local guys are going to take you out of the market. So you can't really, you must look at your product, and that's another thing to look at. Maybe I should have said it at the beginning. Look at the price points at which your product is. It's quite important. It's going to sell for more overseas, which is not a problem. Okay? While in South Africa, a small bottle retails for 40 Rand, and overseas it retails for 120 Rand per rand. But it's not really any different in their minds because they've got money, etc. But that's how the model works, and it sells for the same in every other country except South Africa. Huge problem called grey market imports. Massive, massive, massive problem. In fact, our experience with grey market is that it's probably the most sophisticated industry I've ever come across. Okay? There are guys in South Africa, in Europe, that watch the price of everything that is a brand, consumer brand. And the minute there's a big enough differential, it gets loaded onto containers and moved to that next country, and there will be a retailer that will buy it. Over and above that, sophisticated economies, Japan being a prime example, the government encourages grey market imports. Because they're saying, why should we pay more? It's cheaper elsewhere, and I agree with it. So you've got a problem on your hands. And that your South African market is going to end up being the source of grey market imports. So you've got to make sure that you control your distribution in South Africa. It might have been loose before. The minute you go global, it's going to be at a cheaper price in South Africa, and you need to get control of it. Pharmaceutical industry have had this problem for years, and they've mastered it by controlling it all the way into the consumer's hands. The drug, they say it's for technical reasons, and they don't want anyone to stop grey market imports. Because the prices of drugs around the world are so different, okay, that the minute there's a differential, people are onto it and they'll export it. So your financial model is, consider that before you leave the shore and go and talk to someone, because you need to be making, and also here, you need to be making substantial profit globally. Because it's not an established brand, you're launching it. So you're putting masses of cash, okay, into communication. It's not tangible. You're putting it into a black hole if nothing comes back. You need to be making a lot of money. And it's also high growth time. So think about cash flow. You're not steady. You're going like this, hopefully, in the new country. So you sold one this month, now you're selling two, then you're selling four. So your working capital, it sucks cash. So you need to be very profitable. Lots of money. We look at, when we launch in a new country, we look at a 5-year to break even. So you're looking at, but then once it breaks even, then it's a whole different story. Because it's a bigger economy, hopefully. Okay, so those are some of the things I just wanted to highlight about structuring your business locally for global success. And just to conclude then, I've just got a couple of slides here that the graphic designer did, or the illustrator did, just about, this is the perception, where to, okay, it's a maze, okay, or it's a David and Goliath exercise. But I hope through what I've said today that it doesn't seem like that anymore. Quite honestly, there's only a few things that you need to think about, and then pick a country and just go to that country. It's not that difficult. It's just one country, one product, and start. Have the cash, have the distributor. Start with one country. You can put a global head office. You can just put your top people onto it and start. It's not that difficult, and one thing will lead to the next. It's momentum creates opportunity. So you can't think about it forever, but just select that country carefully and just be conscious of some of the things that I've said today. Those that have been our experiences. I just want to end off with a quote I read in it was a while back now, maybe a year ago. Koos Becker from NASPER said, it's very difficult for companies from first world countries to do business in China, but we're not from a first world country. And it is so true. And it's not about going into other developing worlds, because that's their big thing. Going into South Africans know developing countries. Quite honestly, it applies equally to first world countries. When we launched in Japan a while back, at the same time, just coincidentally, our American distributor and our British distributor so happened to launch in the country at the same time. Now, I think it was within 2 years, both the Americans and the British pulled out of Japan because they couldn't make a go of it. And we were still at it and have been successful. And there's a simple reason for that. The Americans go, we're America. Why are the Japanese telling us what to do? We're a superpower. The British go, we got the Queen. What have you got? Your greatest strength is being South African. That's the joke of the whole thing. You might be sitting here in the bottom of the world, in a developing country. We're actually better placed than anyone else in the global markets. South Africans get employed by multinationals because of their tenacity. The tenacity is your greatest asset in going global. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah.
When you select a distributor, if you're very small,
Yeah.
would you select a large distributor or a small distributor?
You know, we've had experience with both, and I can't give you an absolute answer because most recently in Canada we went with almost a startup company, but the guys that own the business, 2 guys, were previously with another business and broke away and started. So their relationships with the trade, they've got 20, 30-year relationships in the trade and everyone, and they set up this business. And it's probably been our biggest success. Very small business, very focused on our brands, great relationships. Big companies we've got Alberta Culver, which is one of the big multinational, they've got VO5 and all those sort of things. They were also brilliant. We used them in New Zealand because they dominate. They're that big fish thing. They dominate that market. So they can get, and in many ways, they get better media, prices, they get and their relationships with the trade are phenomenal. So line them up and go see them and just work out the cultural fit. It's much easier to have a cultural fit with a smaller business than a big business. Because the CEO might change, smaller business might be privately owned. There's no absolute answer to that. Yeah.
Scandinavia, I didn't see them in the top 3.
Yeah.
Okay. But another question is can you use a kind of a pool strategy? If you have a distributor in Europe, for instance, or Scandinavia, whatever,
Yeah.
and you do online campaigns from this side, trying to create a pool strategy, do you think that you can do that, or must your distributor also do your marketing in that specific area?
So you're saying only using online as a marketing tool?
You've got a distributor, but you from holding company is doing marketing campaigns to pull the brand through the whole chain. Is that viable?
Well, I'm not quite sure I understand it. We do all our marketing out of our head office in South Africa for all the countries around the world. But it's implemented all locally. So, I mean, we're on TV there, we're in print there, et cetera, et cetera. And we're obviously online as well. But I don't think it will work just online, if that's your question. Because although it's another thing we look at, I didn't put it up there because I don't think it's that level. We look at how connectivity, I think they call it. How many people have got a computer, how online is. First world countries generally these days, they all are. So it's not a big factor anymore. It used to be. So, but quite interestingly, you know, people, you still need to be in the traditional mediums like TV and print and all the rest of it. People use the internet, in our experience, to sort of do a due diligence on what they've seen in the internet. They see it almost as the bulk, where you get the real story, lots of information. They get a 30-second slot passing you on TV. So you'll see, like, say for example in America and Canada, it's amazing to watch. As the TV ad happens, it spikes. So they actually go online just after they've watched. And often through that same feed, because they get their internet connection through their cable provider. And so it is great to be online, but it's normally precipitated by something that's more traditional in terms of advertising. Where do you manufacture? In Johannesburg. So head office in Cape Town, manufacture in Johannesburg, but we should manufacture in Durban because it's got to go to the port. So historically, because we're a South African business, it was obviously the place to manufacture from a logistics point of view, because most of the market's there. But now that we've become a global business, we should be manufacturing in Durban, just to save on the cost from Joburg to Durban to get it to the port first. It's not a big thing. I mean, obviously you've got to, you don't want to be moving. It's not a big cost. We manufacture everything in South Africa. It's becoming more difficult now that we've got bigger, because I gave you the Brazilian example. We're going to have to manufacture in Brazil if we want to launch there to get our costs down. So, but certainly most countries that we've been to hasn't been from manufacturing in South Africa. And that whole made in South Africa thing and all this, it's not such a big thing. People talk about it, oh, you manufacture in a first world country. As long as you've got a good facility, you can demonstrate you've got a good facility where you manufacture. It's not really a problem in our experience.
I want to know, in South Africa, your brand is probably the most leading brand in this industry, in your industry.
Yeah.
And when you advertise here, people know this is the leading brand. When you market in the other countries, do you also market it as a leading brand from South Africa, or just it's a total new brand? Or?
Yeah, it's good. It's a very good question there. We'd never used South Africans as a successful brand in South Africa. When, for example, we launched in the UK in 2002. We didn't say that in the UK. But now that we launched in America a few years ago, we said it's number one in the UK. So we sold it on product intrinsics, as we always do. Okay? But when you've got a market that people respect, it's nice to add that in. It's good because of intrinsically it's good, but it's also the product most recommended by pharmacists in the UK, or number one selling in the UK, and you can add that on to your reasons to believe for the consumer. But if you're going into a first world country from a developing country, I don't think it's such. It depends on your product. See, South Africa is not known as in our industry, either from New York or Switzerland or France, and using skincare, so it's not known as a place. I mean, if you're cars and you're from Germany, you're probably going to say that, or your watches from Switzerland, you're going to say that, or chocolates from Switzerland, you're going to make a point of saying that. I don't know what your business is, but if South Africa is known as, if you sell Amarula, then you're going to say from South Africa. You know what I mean? Because then the elephant in the tree makes sense. But I mean,
sometimes you might come across as very, not open, but it can come across as very arrogant when you add, I suppose it depends on what country you go in. Say, for instance, from South Africa, you go to Namibia with a big brand, and you say the leading brand of South Africa can come across as very arrogant thing.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if you went across into another African country, South Africa would work. If you're going, sort of down the food chain. I don't think it's arrogant. It's all in the execution, really, I think. Anything else? Yeah.
Deciding on a product, low-cost product, including exports, then you decide between low-cost.
Well, you can't. I wouldn't talk about. Let's talk about GP. I reckon you need a 75% GP. Okay, if you're in consumer goods, I don't know what you're in. Okay, you might be able to, but you need money. The thing is to produce money. It's fast growing. And cash flow is going to kill you. Okay, so I would say you're going to be looking at maybe a little bit less, 70%. You can get away depending on the industry. So when you add your costs from the bottom up, so you've got your cost of production, and then duties, and then shipping, and then your distributor, and then you need to add on a profit to make that kind of money. It's going to get you to a price. And that's going to be the price of your product. There's nothing you can do about it. If you say, well, no one's going to buy it at that price, I'm going to reduce it, well, the only person's profit you're reducing on is your own. And then you're minimizing your chance of success. Because in global brands, they're not about low margin. It's a brand. We spend we spend a hell of a lot more, but we like to end up at 25% of turnover on advertising and promotion. In every country. We spend way more than that. In America, we will never end up at 25%. No brand will end up at 25% because the market's too big and competitive. You're going to end up at about 40 or 50% of turnover on advertising and promotion. Very, very different there. So you've got to spend lots and lots of money to be competitive with everyone. It's called, what they call share of voice in the marketing industry. If you're not out there talking, everyone else is out there talking and you're not, you become pretty much unknown. So I'm not saying you can't do it with a low-cost product, but when you add duties on it, you've got to be realistic. You're not going to be fighting, I don't think a global brand fights on price. It fights on image. And to create image, you need communication. And that costs, and I've told you the costs. You know, the costs are huge. 3 million rand for one ad. You know, and how many times can you do that in a year? You know, if you're coming off something, especially with rands, I mean, that's where you're starting with your cash flow initially. Yeah.
This South African Export Council, are you part of it? Do you find it very helpful in what way? And also, your brand, is it more of a results driven, or it's more of a like a cosmetic kind? I know bio oil, okay, I would assume it's more results driven, but is it the way you market it? Is because you also talked about the claims as well. I mean, how do we come across it? We have to submit it to a lab for.
Yeah. Okay. Well, also the first question about the South African Cosmetics, Export Council, level 1 for each industry. I think it's great that we've got that. These people that help exporters, but it is politically driven. Okay, so what happens in our industry is we're friendly with the guys from the Export Council, we talk to them, we don't use them, and at the end of the year, to justify their existence, they ask us what our turnover has done and they submit that to government. Okay, and then they use their time and effort to promote smaller businesses going global. Their business, they're supposed to, we're SME, but I mean, there are a lot of smaller companies that want to go global, and the reality is those small businesses, and I've told them this, are never going to make it. They're not even successful in South Africa, but they're trying to promote them in the global arena. I've even spoken to them in other countries, or in Japan recently. I met with the office there, and I said, why do you waste your time? Like, they said, I know, it's so embarrassing, because we're always introducing people, and then we've got to, fix the collateral damage afterwards, because they're not ready to go, especially to Japan, and you're there with some guy. I was in Bologna in Italy at a show, and the Export Council took 12 South African companies there to the show, and they all had stands. They did it once. I didn't recognize one of those 12 companies or brands from South Africa. Never even heard of the products, but they're taking them overseas. They've got no chance. I mean, but they stopped doing it now. But it's, as I say, it's politically driven, and so it's not. What they should do is pick. You see, the thing is, for South Africa to be successful, you need one company to open up the door, and then the other ones to come through. So you should be backing one company, but it's not politically correct to back one company. So export councils are great, but they're not necessarily doing it the right way, and they're not going to change it. In terms of making claims on products, in our industry, we're policed by the Advertising Standards Authority. So we're not a drug. So the claims you make have to fit. There's advertising acts around the world to do that. So the art of good marketing, in my opinion, on a global brand is to get the person to buy your product without over-promising. Because you've got to control that from the head office. You don't know what's going to happen in the local market. And so it's easy to sell something once. It's the second sale that's the hard thing. So if you promise the world, people will buy your product, especially if it's only going to cost £10, which is not a lot of money in the first world to have a go. But they won't do it the second time. And so in terms of making claims or being results driven, you can have trials and you can have good support. You have to be very careful not to boast too much about it, raise people's expectation and create a negative impression of the product. Very important. Yeah.
Could you just say you're a South African company, where does Union Swiss come from?
Yeah, it was Union Swiss was started in 1954, and it was the Union of South Africa then, and it was a Swiss company and a South African company got together, and they took the Union from South Africa and Swiss from Swiss.
Any last questions? Well, Justin, that seems as if you have answered all the questions. So on behalf of Finwick and the Business School, thank you very much for coming to LeadersAngle. You see there's a lot of enthusiastic people standing up very early. And thank you for sharing in a very pragmatic way your experiences in your company. And also presenting it in a very innovative way, and staying away from the theory, which is a difference for the business school. And good luck for the continuous growth of your company. And from the business school side, we would watch your growth and would like to continue our relationship with the company. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.